Hey team, I'm going to be going over rubrics and outcomes and standards and all of that kind of stuff in this quick little video. It's going to actually be a little long. Maybe we'll put out some and release some short little clips that will be more chewable in short intervals. But this is just a companion video that's to go along with our quick little training on rubrics and outcomes for this school year. All right, so the place to start is inside one of your courses. So you can see that I've already preloaded AP World History for me. So what you would do is just go to dashboard, pick a course, all right, get into it. And you're going to see on your nav bar, your navigation bar for the course, all right, it's the course navigation bar, the white one, as opposed to the global navigation, which is the blue. All right, so under the course navigation, you're going to see a couple buttons that we're going to take a look at. We're going to see the button Outcomes, which is Canvas's term for standards. All right, it would be the same things that we're looking for, and rubrics. All right, so our outcomes, our standards are the things that we're going to be measuring the student by. All right, so we're going to click on the outcomes. All right, which will pull us to a page that will look like this. Now you can see that you can see my course here. All right, so the outcome group, AP World History. All right, now if you have no standards in here, there shouldn't really be anything here. All right, so what we've done is you certainly can create a group of outcomes. All right, if you really wanted to, but what we've done is at the Aquinas school level, we've loaded almost all of the outcomes, and we're adding more each day. Really, every outcome is available except for a few AP courses that we're working our way through and quickly adding those. So if you don't have them today, there are certainly standards that you can add, and we will be adding all of the course standards. Of course, maybe there's some set of standards your department has used that we have not added yet. Just talk to us. We'll get it going. And we'll take care of that. Okay, so quickly, I would like to then show you how to load in some outcomes, okay? So what we're going to do is instead of importing, we're not importing anything. We're not going to create anything. What we're going to do is we're going to find, okay? So find those, okay? So we're going to look under the account standards, and we're looking at Aquinas High School. Now, obviously, there's two here. All right, there's that one, and then there's this one that has nothing. I don't even know why it's there. Maybe I'll look into that. All right, so you want to look at the one that has all our standards already in it. Okay, so these are the standards we've added at the root level. All right, of our course. Okay, so you can see a couple different things here. So NGSS, you science people, you can add. You can see the different ones. All right, we have the ISTE standards, we have the ISOs, we have the state content standards, we have the Common Core standards, and this is where we're going to end up getting the AP standards, okay? So right now, you saw that I already had some standards in. I'm going to add a couple more, so I want to add the ISTE standards. So I want to add all of these, okay? So at this root level, you can see I say ISTE standards for students, and I want to hit this button, add all outcomes. I could go down the line and pick individual ones, but I want to copy the entire framework of ISTE. All right, so I'm going to hit add outcomes. And so you can see it's starting to process, and it's going to add those over to my account. So you can see all outcomes for ISTE standards have been successfully added to your course. Super easy. All right. So say Common Core, I didn't have those in there either, right? So I want to do, personally for me, I want to do the history science, all right? So then I would be looking at, there it is, the reading, history, social science 9 through 10, all right? My class is a sophomore class, so this is the one I want to add. So you can see that. So I want to add all outcomes, all right? So that's going to add those over, all right? And so you could just find which are relevant. Obviously, everyone is using Common Core. Everyone is using ISOs. and then obviously whatever content standard you might want to look at. And I'd also encourage you maybe to take a look at the ISTE standards, which are awesome. Okay. Okay. So I think that should do it. All right. So now that I've added my standards, all right, if I go back, you'll see that I've added, there it is. Okay. So I've got my AP World Content Standards. I've got my my reading, some of my Common Core. There's probably some others I need to look for, and also those ISTE standards that I added, or maybe I didn't do that. But in any case, all right. So the next tab next to it is alignment. So what it's asking for is under what assignments are these various outcomes aligned to, right? So it's actually going to be really helpful for you to see the coverage, right? From an instructional standpoint, once you've been using it, how often these have been aligned, right? So this is the kind of evidence that we're talking about that we need as a school, right? So you can see here, let's see here if I can find a couple standards. All right, here we go. So skill 3A, right, which is something connected to my AP class. You can see I have 138 instances of these assignments aligning to that skill, right? So that's something to consider, right? And it's also a way for us to check to make sure that all of these standards have been covered, have been aligned, right, to our content, all right, that we're teaching in the class, all right? So kind of an easy way to look at that, okay? All right, so those are our outcomes. So next, what I want to take a look at is that rubrics button, all right? So this is where you're going to create rubrics or add rubrics of different kinds, all right? So you can pre-create rubrics at the course level here without even touching an assignment, all right? So right now, if I hit add assignment, add a rubric rather, all right, you can see that I can start creating something, right? So I'm just gonna call this test rubric, okay? So now the question is, all right, well, what kind of criterion am I adding, right? So if I was going into this, it has by default this criteria, all right? And you're going to see a column of criteria, right? But if I'm adding one single criterion, right? So I'm adding one thing, all right? I'm just going to add that. I'm going to create a new one. All right, and then I'm going to add the description and maybe a longer description, I don't know, right? And then there you are, okay? And then you can obviously add different ratings and then point values, okay? You can also click range, all right, if you want to start looking at each one being like a range. So you're saying like 10 to 5 points or 5 to 0 points, right, in your point breakdown of rating, right? So that's something to consider, right, if you want to do that. All right, so you can see I can just hit this plus button, boom, and it automatically just adjusts that range, right? So it automatically knew, okay, well, 5 to 3, right? Well, then I'm going to hit another one, boom, there you go, 2 to 0, so forth, right? So that will adjust, and obviously the total down here will work, okay? So that's if you're manually creating some criterion for this rubric. Now, where the secret sauce of rubrics, particularly as we're talking about aligning to outcomes, is going to be through find outcome. Now, this is going to directly pull up the outcomes for your course, right? So these are going to preload the things that I've already loaded in. So say I know that under this assignment that I am going to be assessing under my Unit 1, Topic 1.2, this specific standard, right? So you can see the under here, right? I know that this assignment that I'm going to be doing covers Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and the core beliefs and practices of these religions continue to shape societies in Africa and Asia, right? So that's a specific thing, all right? So our point breakdown here, or maybe to put it a different way, is our grades of proficiency, all right? The way in which we can process how the student has acquired this knowledge, right, is either through what the student has given me. There's not enough evidence to say whether the student knows the information or not. Say it wasn't turned in, or it was difficult to understand, or something like that, right? We would say that the student is not developing, meaning that there's no indication that what they had prior to this, maybe in your pre-assessment or something like that, by the demonstration of what they've given you, that they've actually developed some proficiency, some knowledge on it, right? That they're developing, that they are, that there is some knowledge acquisition, but that it's or skill acquisition, but it's not meeting the mark of what would be considered proficient. Now, how that translates to grades, that's a different matter. But in the sense of, do they know how to do it at a proficient level, right? That would be this mark, and then exceeds proficiency. So maybe they've gone maybe beyond just the core proficiency of knowing what that is. Maybe that mark would make sense. All right. Now, obviously there are questions about these points and how that translates to grades. All right. That obviously is something to consider. But I do want you to recognize that the calculation method for using to determine proficiency, as we align all of these standards or outcomes to learning activities, is that this is going to take a decaying average. So what that means is, and here's our example, all right? So the calculation method, 65 over 35, decaying average. So most recent result counts as 65% of mastery weight. Average of all other results count at 35% of weight. If there is only one result, the single score will be returned. All right, so if that makes any sense, you're going to be, we're going to take into account the most recent thing, but we're not going to forget the other opportunities, all right, that came up to show proficiency in that thing, because maybe that skill was easier to apply in this one scenario, and they did well on it, but then the skill applied to another context they did not do well in, which would show maybe a blended proficiency of that skill, right? So then the next time, right, we go into it, we would see that if they've really achieved proficiency, that proficiency level would increase as it's assessed more frequently. All right, so there we are. All right, that's how that works. Now, here's a critical little button. As I'm creating my rubric, and if I want this rubric to be used to calculate grades, all right, the question is, when I'm adding it to my rubric, do I want to use this single criterion, this standard? Do I want to use it for scoring purposes? If I leave it checked that I want to use it for scoring purposes, then that means that this specific content breakdown, right? This outcome breakdown in my rubric is bound to 4 points. All right, so it has to be 4 points. You can't change that point value. So this is actually where it might get into a problem. Say you want your assignment to be worth more than 4 points. Say it's a project and you're assessing multiple standards, but that those point things don't really equate to the way you want to do your point breakdown or something like that, right? Say it's a larger assignment that you want to apply a bigger amount of points or something, right? You aren't bound by the 4-point thing if you uncheck this box, right? So I don't want to use this criterion for scoring. I just want the rubric breakdown, maybe in this case, right? So whatever that is, whatever decision I've made, I want to import that. So you can see here that when I click on, when I go to grade, right, when this is applied to an assignment, if I click 3 or click 2 or click 1, it's not going to impact the total point value on the student's assignment,